reactions of the topic photosynthesis in higher plants. In that light reactions, we have studied the three main steps of the light reactions, that is photolysis of water, photoexcitation of chlorophyll molecules, and photophosphorylation. I already said that it is the light reaction occurs in the grana of the chloroplast, where the grana is the site of the light reactions. So this light reaction was studied by Robert Hill. So this reaction is also called as the Hill's reaction. I'll repeat the concept of light reaction. It is a light dependent reaction occurring in the grana of the chloroplast, resulting in synthesis of ATP and NADPH2. So we know that the chlorophyll pigments are present in the thylakoid membrane of the grana. So along with this, it has the photosystems, that is the structural and functional unit. These functional unit, structural and functional unit are the protein complexes which results in the synthesis of the two main products, that is ATP and NADPH2. If you go with the summary, total photochemical reactions that occurs in the grana results in the formation of two assimilatory powers, two very important components, that is ATP and NADP. Yes. Now, in photoexcitation of chlorophyll molecules, when the light falls on the pigment molecules, they get photoexcited and release the electrons. As they get charged, they release the electrons, and the electrons pass to the common reaction center. From the common reaction center, it is accepted by an electron acceptor known as primary electron acceptor. Then in the process, there is excitation, there is photoexcitation of these chlorophyll molecules with the emission of the electrons. So that process where each molecules get charged, where they get charged and releases the electrons. After releasing the electrons, again they get reduced and pass the electrons to the neighboring molecules. So based on this, we have studied there are two reaction centers or the photosystems, photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. Then in photolysis of water, in the process of photolysis of water molecule splits. It is splitting of water molecules with electrons, the protons with the release of oxygen. Only one molecule is considered over here, while the molecule of water splits to form 4 protons, 4 electrons with the release of oxygen and even the water also. So the second process is photolysis of water, while third is photophosphorylation, that is synthesis of ATP molecules in the presence of light, where adenosine diphosphate combines with inorganic phosphate with the formation of ATP. So in this photophosphorylation, there are two processes of the light reactions. Based on the movement of the electrons, there are two types of photophosphorylation. One is cyclic photophosphorylation and the other is non-cyclic photophosphorylation. On the board, the schematic representation of the photophosphorylation is being displayed. You can go through the figure number 13.5 and 13.6 of the textbook, where you will find the processes of cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylation. So already we know that what is photophosphorylation. synthesis of ATP molecules in the presence of light when adenosine diphosphate combines with inorganic phosphate is known as photophosphorylation. So the whole light reactions that is occurring in the grana of the chloroplast with the help of the photosynthetic pigments. Yes, now in the membrane there are photosynthetic complexes also along with photosystem 1, photosystem 2 and ATP synthetase, which are embedded in the membrane of the thylakoid in the form of protein complexes. So here the photosystems, there is movement of the electrons with the help of photosystems. So as the light falls, so we will go with the processes how there is synthesis of ATP and NADPH2. So in photophosphorylation there is synthesis of ATP molecules. ATP molecules and NADPH2 molecules are being synthesized by two main processes. Those are cyclic and non-cyclic. So this is the schematic representation of the cyclic photophosphorylation. Let me go first with the cyclic photophosphorylation. In this, photosystem 1 is involved. There is only photosystem 1 is involved in this process where the reaction center is P700. It is P700 where it absorbs the wavelength of light of 700 nm. Yes, so as the light falls on the photopigments or the photosynthetic pigments, that is chlorophyll A, on the absorbs the wavelength of light of P700, they get photo excited and releases the electrons. They release the electrons. These released electrons after the photo excitation of chlorophyll molecules are accepted by the electron acceptor. In the membrane there are photosystem 1, plastoquinone, plastocyanin, cytochrome Bf complex, hydrogen ion carriers, photosystem 2 and ATP synthetase molecule. Yes, so in that as the light falls on the chlorophyll A molecules, it gets photo excited and emits the electrons. This electron is being accepted by the primary acceptor. Which is also present in the thylakoid membrane. So the very first process of cyclic is as the light falls, the pigments get photo excited and releases the electrons. These electrons are being accepted by electron acceptor, the primary electron acceptor. Then the primary electron acceptor passes the electrons to electron transport system. It is a pair of ion channels are present in the electron transport system, where you will learn in the respiration part that as the electrons reach to the electron transport system, there is movement of electrons from one molecule to another molecule. In short, I like to say that in this electron transport system, there are various molecules like FMN, plastoquinone, plastocyanin, ferredoxin, and along with photosystem 2 and ATP synthetase with 4 cytochrome complexes, cytochrome A1, cytochrome A2, cytochrome Bf complex, along with FMN, flavin FMN complexes. So it contains a set of electron carriers. There are pigment molecules present in the electron transport system. As the electron reaches, the electrons are passed from the primary acceptor to the electron transport system. With the help of these electrons, the adenosine diphosphate, that is adenosine diphosphate, combines with inorganic phosphate and form adenosine triphosphate. So there is synthesis of ATP molecules with the help of electrons released by the primary acceptor by electron transport system. The electron transport system synthesizes the ATP molecules. So here the adenosine triphosphate combines with inorganic phosphate to form ATP. So in this process of cyclic, there is synthesis of ATP molecules. Then as they get electrons, these electrons are utilized for the synthesis of ATP, and the electrons reach back to the photosystem, where there is movement of electrons from one molecule to the another molecule in the thylakoid membrane. So in the thylakoid membrane, after the process, again there is release of the electrons. The electrons are passed to the back to the photosystem. Yes, as there is movement of electrons in a cyclic manner, there is movement where the electrons move in a cyclic manner and reach back to the photosystem. So this reaction is called as Cyclic Photophosphorylation. So I do repeat, what is cyclic? Why it is called as cyclic? Because the electrons that are released by the photosystem passes through various molecules or components and reach back to the photosystem. So there is movement, cyclic movement of the electrons. So as the movement of the electron is cyclic and the electrons reach back to the photosystem, this is known as cyclic photophosphorylation. Yes, and during this movement, the important component ATP is synthesized. So this process is known as cyclic photophosphorylation. So I will like to repeat it once again. As the light falls, when the light falls on the chlorophyll pigments, as they receive the light, here in this process only the photosystem 1 is being involved. They get photoexcited. As they get photoexcited, they release the electrons. In this process, the light falls on the pigment molecules, that is the photosystem 1. They get photoexcited. As they get photoexcited, they start to release the electrons. The electrons are being accepted by the primary electron acceptor. Then this primary electron acceptor passes the electrons the electron transport system, where there are set of molecules or ion carriers or electron carriers which transfer the electrons, where there is movement of the electrons from one molecule to another molecule. As the electron reach to the electron transport system, there is synthesis of ATP molecules. And from the electron transport system, the electrons reach back to the photosystem 1. So in this process, there is cyclic movement of the electrons and the electrons reach back to the photosystem. So this process is called as cyclic. So in this, the ATP, during all this process, there is synthesis of ATP molecule. Light reaction itself is the reaction where there is synthesis of ATP molecules. So in this cyclic process, 2 ATP molecules are being identified, or it is are being synthesized or being released by the phosphorylization process or by the cyclic movement of the electrons. So this reaction, there is movement of the electrons in a cyclic manner, and there is even the synthesis of ATP molecules. Now the next one is the non-cyclic photophosphorylization, where both the photosystems are being involved. Just look to the figure there, you will find the differences in that. They are a very short schematic representation, and here it is the schematic representation of a non-cyclic photophosphorylization. As the same process, but the very first step is photolysis of water. Yes, what is photolysis of water? Water splits to release the electrons, protons with the release of oxygen and even the water molecules. This electrons that are being released is accepted by an unknown compound Z, then reaches to the light harvesting complex. So what is light harvesting complexes? All the pigment molecules together work with the photoexcitation of the light and start emitting the electrons, and together they work together and form a complex. As they absorb the light, the solar energy or the light, then it is harvested. The light is being harvested by the pigment molecules. So the component is known as, or the complex is known as light harvesting complex. So here the photosystem 680 is being involved, which absorb the wavelength of light of 680 nm. So here in this, both the photosystems are being involved. As the light falls on the pigment molecules of photosystem 2, they start emitting the electrons. They emit the electrons, and this electron is accepted by the primary acceptor of the photosystem 2. Yes, this primary acceptor, after excitation, after the absorption of light, after exciting, they emit the electrons. They get ignited, or we can say they start emit the electrons. They get photo-excited. Why we call it as photo-excited? Because with the presence of light, the electrons are being released. So the photosystem 1 get photo-excited and start releasing the electrons. This electrons is being accepted by the primary electron acceptor of the photosystem 2, and the electrons are passed to the electron transport system. Where they get reduced, and the reduced process, that is the redox potential of the molecule decreases, and the electrons reach to the photosystem 1, where the reaction center is P700. So in the beginning of this, simultaneously the process occurs, and there is simultaneous processes occurring in non-cyclic. First process is photolysis of water, which emit the electrons, and the photoexcitation of the chlorophyll molecules. Both processes occur simultaneously. Yes, so when this process are occurring, the chlorophyll molecules emit the electrons, where it passes the electrons to the primary acceptor. From the primary acceptor, it passes to the electron transport system, and there is a reduce reaction, where generally when they absorb the light, they are charged and start emitting the electrons. After losing the electrons, they get reduced. So this process of charging and reduction goes on continuously in the process in the thylakoid membrane. So as each and every step in this, each and every step of it, whenever a molecule receives a light, it gets photoexcited and releases the electrons. The electrons that molecules which emit the electrons, after emitting the electrons, again it get reduced, again get charged when light falls on it. So this process is downhill reaction or reduced downhill gradient. Downhill process of reaction occurs within the molecules present in the thylakoid membrane. So as the light falls on the light Harving complex, or where it absorbs the wavelength of light of 680 nm, it gets photoexcited and releases the electron to the primary acceptor. From the primary acceptor, the electrons pass to the electron transport system. In this electron transport system, as I said, again there are plastoquinone, ferritoxin, cytochrome associated with it, cytochrome complexes, and plastocyanine. So these electrons pass through all these pigment molecules, and ultimately there is synthesis of ATP molecules with the help of electrons released by the primary acceptor. So in this, the ATP is being synthesized, and the electrons reaches to the photosystem 1. It reaches to the photosystem 1. Again, when the light falls on the photosystem 1, where it absorbs the light of wavelength of light of 700 nm, it emits the electrons, and the electrons again reach to the primary acceptor. Yes, primary acceptor, and when this electrons reach to the primary acceptor, where it combines this electron released by the primary acceptors will help to accept the protons or the hydrogen ions. When it accepts the hydrogen ions, the NADP is being reduced to form NADPH2. Yes, in the photosystem 2, NADP enzymes are present in the stroma of the chloroplast. So these enzymes, when there is photolysis of water, yes, protons are being released. These proton released are accepted by the hydrogen carriers, protein carriers. These hydrogen carriers passes with the help of these protons, where NADP is reduced to form dpH2. Now in this, the movement of electrons is unidirectional. That is, the light falls, emit the electrons, passes to electron transport system and then to photosystem 1, again emit the electrons, and the electrons are being used by NADP to form NADPH2. So here there is unidirectional movement of electrons, and the electrons that are being released do not reach back to the photosystem. So this process is called as non-cyclic. But there is synthesis of these two components, ATP and NADPH2. So overall, in this overall process, one molecule of ATP and one molecule of NADPH2 are being synthesized. So let us once again go through the stepwise process of non-cyclic photophosphorylation. So first is the light falls on the photosystem 2 of the chlorophyll molecule, where it is having the reaction center of P680, which indicates that it is of the component of photosystem 2. They get a photo excited, and simultaneously the very first process is with photolysis of water. As photolysis of water occurs, splitting of molecules of water occurs, there is release of electrons, protons and the oxygen. So these electrons are absorbed by an unknown compound called as Z, while the protons now they are being used by the enzyme for the synthesis of NADPH2. So as the light falls, they get photoexcited, emit the electrons to the electron acceptor. From the primary electron acceptor, the electrons are passed to the electron transport system, where it has its own protein complexes which get charged and reduced on the acceptance and reduction of the electrons. Ultimately, the electrons pass to the photosystem 1. Then during as the electrons are passing, there is downhill process of the electrons. During this process, with the help of electron transport system, there is synthesis of ATP molecules, and as the light falls on the reaction center P700, it also gets photoexcited and releases the electrons to the primary acceptor. From the primary acceptor, with the help of electrons, NADP absorbs the protons and involved in the synthesis of NADPH2. So in this process, there is movement of electrons, and they does not reach. The electrons do not return back to the photosystems. It is called as non-cyclic, and as the scientists have studied, it was being formulated, demonstrated by Hill and Mendel, and they called this scheme as Z scheme. Non-cyclic is also called as Z scheme. Why it is called as a Z scheme? There is unidirectional movement of electrons from the pigment molecules. Yes, but ultimately resulting in the synthesis synthesis of ATP and NADPH2. So here this scheme, it is unidirectional, and why it is called as non-cyclic? Because the movement of the electrons do not reach back to the photosystem. So it is called as non-cyclic. During all all processes, this process helps in the formation of or synthesis of ATP and NADPH2. So both the phosphorylization reaction, that is cyclic and non-cyclic, help in the synthesis of ATP and NADPH2 molecules, which are the byproducts that is being utilized during the dark reaction. So I said already, there are two reactions in photosynthesis. One is the light reaction and the other is the dark reaction. In the light reactions, there is photoexcitation of chlorophyll molecules, photolysis of water and photophosphorylation. In photophosphorylation, there is cyclic and non-cyclic. So in cyclic, the electrons move in a cyclic manner and reach back to the photosystem 1, while in non-cyclic, the movement of electron is unidirectional and do not reach back to the photosystem. But in these two processes, ATP and NADP are being synthesized. So with the figures, let us study the differences between this cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylation. What are the differences? What differences you can find in the cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylation? So if you go with the points, what are the differences between the cyclic and non-cyclic as an external information? In this, these two are the very important questions. This is where you have to explain the schematic representation of the cyclic photophosphorylation and the non-cyclic photophosphorylation with a neat representation of the schematic diagram. So the very first difference, and along with that the external information as an external process or knowledge, let us see the differences between the cyclic and the non-cyclic process. So the very first difference is, in cyclic only one photosystem is involved, that is photosystem 1. Only photosystem 1 is involved in cyclic photophosphorylation, while in non-cyclic two photosystems are being involved. Both the photosystems are being involved, that is photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. Both the photosystems are being involved in non-cyclic photophosphorylation. So that is the first point. What is the first point? That there is, in this, only photosystem 1 is involved, while in non-cyclic both the photosystems, photosystem 1 and photosystem 2 are involved. Then second is, the movement of electrons is cyclic and the electrons reach back to the photosystem. The movement of electrons is cyclic and the electrons reach back to the photosystem. While here the movement of electrons is unidirectional, only in one direction, and the electrons do not reach back to the photosystems. So it is known as non-cyclic photophospholization. Then you will find something difference here. Here only ATP molecules are being synthesized. So in cyclic photophosphorylation, during all these processes, only ATP molecules are being synthesized. The third point is there is synthesis of only ATP molecules, while in non-cyclic photophosphorylation, there is synthesis of both ATP and NADPH molecules. So the third point is what? In cyclic, only ATP molecules are synthesized, while in non-cyclic, both ATP and NADPH molecules are synthesized. Here, two molecules of ATP are. Fourth point is two molecules of ATP are being synthesized, and here one molecule of ATP and NADP is being synthesized to get the differences. Then fifth point is you can see this reaction here. Why? In this non-cyclic, no such reaction occurs. So it is in non-cyclic. The process involves photolysis of water. So the next point is, the fifth point is photolysis of water molecule occurs. Here it is not involved in the photolysis of water. So the next point, the fifth point is it is not involved in the photolysis of water, while in non-cyclic it is involved in the photolysis of water. Ultimately, there is no photolysis, so there is no release of oxygen. The molecular oxygen is not evolved by the cyclic during the cyclic process of photophosphorylation. Oxygen is not being evolved. There is no photolysis, so there is no release of molecular oxygen. So the next sixth point is that this in cyclic photolysis of water does not occur, or it is not involved in the photolysis of water, and non-cyclic involves photolysis of water, and there is no release of oxygen. There is a release of oxygen. So we can take the point as it is not involved in the process of photolysis of water. No molecular oxygen is being evolved by cyclic photophosphorylation. Here it is involved in the process of within the photolysis of water, and there is evolution of oxygen. There is formation of oxygen. Yes, and in this process NADP are not reduced. It is concerned only with the synthesis of ATP molecules. NADP are not being reduced by cyclic phosphorylation, while NADP is being reduced by the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. And as I said that the movement of electrons, there is cyclic movement and there is unidirectional movement of the electrons. Oxygen is not evolved, oxygen is being evolved in this process. So ultimately at the end of both these processes, ATP and NADPH2 are being synthesized. So in short, if we say cyclic and non-cyclic, light falls on the photosystem, photo excited, emit the electrons pass to the electron transport system. During that process, there is synthesis of ATP molecules. As there is synthesis of only ATP molecules are being formed, and the movement of the electrons is cyclic, and there is synthesis of ATP molecules, and the electrons reach back to the photosystems. So this reaction is called as cyclic photophosphorylation, as been studied by Hill and Bendel, Robert Hill and Bendel. There is unidirectional movement of the electrons. So this process is known as non-cyclic photophosphorylation. So these are the two important processes which are involved in the synthesis of ATP and NADPH2. Then the next step of the light reaction is Chemo osmosis process, which was being studied by Peter Michell. So one more reaction in the light reaction is Chemo osmosis. So in the light reaction we have studied that there are particular photosynthetic pigments with the help of ATP synthetase molecule, where the electrons are being released by these photosynthetic molecules, and the electrons released by the photosynthetic molecules ultimately are being used up, or they are being utilized for the synthesis of the energy components ATP and NADPH2, and these two components are utilized for the dark reaction that occurs in the stroma of the chloroplast. So the chloroplast have the two main internal components, that is the grana and the stroma, where the pigment molecules are present in the thylakoid membrane, where it absorbs the solar light or the solar energy. With the help of this energy, it emits the electrons, and the electrons are used in the synthesis of the ATP and NADPH2. One more process of light reaction is Chemo osmosis. So overall, these three processes help in the formation of ATP and NADPH2. So in this class, the two important questions are the schematic representation. Draw the schematic representation of cyclic photophosphorylation and non-cyclic photophosphorylation. So in this fifth lecture, yes, we have studied cyclic and non-cyclic. The main questions of this are: draw the schematic representation, or explain the cyclic photophosphorylation, where you have to draw the schematic representation and explain. And usually the non-cyclic photophosphorylation is only the question that is to be asked is: draw the schematic representation of non-cyclic photophosphorylation, or draw Z scheme. Then as a 1 mark question, it can be asked why this process is called as cyclic photophosphorylation, why this process is known as non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Give reasons why cyclic photophosphorylation is known as, why it is known as cyclic photophosphorylation, and why this process of phosphorylation is known as non-cyclic photophosphorylation. And the other 5 marks question is: differentiate the cyclic and the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. So in this chapter of the light reaction, we have studied the cyclic and the non-cyclic photophosphorylation, a very important concept of the process of photosynthesis. So non-cyclic and the cyclic process, in the textbook the first representation is non-cyclic, and the very first process that occurs in the process of photosynthesis is photolysis of water, where the electrons are being released, protons are being released. With the help of electrons, there is synthesis of ATP and NADPH2. In the next class, we will deal with chemo osmosis studied by Peter Michel. So in this class, we have studied the cyclic and the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. So in the next class, we will go with the continuation of the other concept of the photosynthesis. So for that, the next class, we will continue with the next class of the topic photosynthesis. Oh, thank you.